There are 5 major cases in Latin: the nominative, genitive, dative, accusative, and ablative. And these cases help show what the noun is doing in the sentence. For instance, when a noun is in the nominative case, it's probably the subject of the sentence. In the genitive, it's probably showing possession. If you know these 5 major cases, not just the endings, but how Latin utilizes these cases in many different ways, you'll be fine with Latin. But these aren't the only 5, just the big 5. There's a 6th, the vocative case, and that's the topic of this video. The word vocative comes from the Latin verb voco vocare, to call, and that's what the vocative case is for. It's the case you use when you're calling someone, and this technically is called the direct address, the person being talked to. Here, let me illustrate. Caesar, watch out for those assassins. Caesar is the person I'm talking to, and so that word would be put in the vocative case in Latin. Cicero, how are you doing? Cicero, again, is the person I'm talking to, and thus would be in the vocative. Boy, pour me more wine. Boy, vocative. Oh, and when Cicero complains to the gods with, "Oh, die immortales," he's using the vocative case because he's talking to them. Okay, so it's not technically the subject, which would be the nominative case, because this noun isn't doing the action of the verb. It's actually just identifying who is being talked to, and that's the difference between the nominative and vocative. The vocative is used to identify the addressee. So I know what you're thinking. A whole other case, more endings to memorize? Why didn't I learn the vocative endings when I learned the first or third declensions? Well, you don't have to. The vocative case is pretty easy if you follow a few really simple steps. Number 1, the vocative is the same as the nominative for most nouns. So if you're talking to your mistress, the vocative is still domina. If you're talking to a boy, it's still puer. To a dog, still canis. When Cicero speaks to the Senate, he calls them patres conscripti. So the vocative is identical to the nominative plural. The vocative is the same as the nominative for every single plural noun. But there are a few exceptions to this rule. And so number 2, the vocative of singular nouns ending in a us in the second declension is a short e, an e. So the vocative of Brutus is brute, like et tu brute. Of dominus is domine, and of amicus it's amice. But rule number 3, if it's a proper name that ends in an ius, like Julius, Sempronius, or Vergilius, the vocative is instead a long I, e. So Iuli, Semproni, Vergilii. And this rule works for filius too, whose vocative is fili. I'm not going to call this rule number 4, but the only other thing you need to know about the vocative endings is that the adjective meus, but not mea or mei, but just the masculine singular form meus, is mi in the vocative. So to say, my dear friend, you would say mi care amiche. My son is mi fili. My Brutus, mi brute. But my girl is just mea puella. And my friends are mei amici. Since the vocative is the case of direct address, the case for the name or term of the person you're talking to, you're going to find it used a lot in sentences with the verb in the second person. Marce, quid tu agis? Marcus, what are you doing? You'll also find it used a whole heck of a lot with imperatives, commands, like Vergili, recita, and Iuli, dic mihi omnia. So the vocative case is pretty simple, because in most situations, the vocative ending is exactly identical to the nominative, with second declension singular masculine nouns the only exception. So if you're going to form the vocative case, you can actually do well by working backwards from these rules. 1, if the word is a name ending in ius, or the noun filius, or the adjective meus, the vocative is a long I, Vergili, fili, mi. If not, then check to see if the noun ends in just an us, like Brutus or Dominus. And if so, then the vocative is a short e, brute or domine. Otherwise, the vocative is the same as the nominative, like puella, puer, viri, senatores, or gladiator.